Hi, I'm NewsTribune sports writer Chris Yukas, and I'm here with sports editor Kevin Klum and sports writer Jared Bell. And today on NT Prep Preview, we're going to take a look at the area prep football slate. Guys, Michael Hermosillo had a huge week for the Pirates last week with 351 yards and only 9 carries. Does the Pirates standout have what it takes to keep on going?
You know, I think Michael does. I mean, he had a great week last week against Yorkville. He's got a lot of really good opponents coming up on the schedule in which he could run for a lot of yards against a lot of defenses. There are a couple of really tough games and really, good defenses that they're going to face later in the season. But for the time being, I think he can keep it up.
Does he have what it takes to hit 2,000 yards?
Well, obviously he's on pace for more than 2,000 yards at 350 last week, but he does have it what it takes, I think. I mean, he has, like Jared said, some easy teams like this week, Chicago Steinmetz, the public league teams. You can always run all over them. It just really depends on how much they get up early on and whether or not Trent Swords will leave him in the game. But Michael, he has it all as in a running back. He has the speed. He's so much faster than everybody else out there. And he's really powerful as well. He can knock over people and keep on going, trying to get through those tacklers.
Kind of like Kevin had said, he might also be too good to get to that number. I mean, there may be a point in which he gets pulled out of the game because he's run for so many yards and they have such a big lead. So it's also possible that they could do too much, kind of like in the past with Curtis Knapp did, where sometimes he would play the first quarter and that was it because he'd run for so many yards.
One thing's for sure, whether he gets 2,000 yards or not, he's going to be pretty fun to watch this year.
Yeah, and that would equate about 200 yards per game. So you figure if they get in the playoffs and you go even farther in the first round, it's very possible he could get that.
Another highlight last week was Bureau Valley outlasting Hall 35-27. What does the game tell us about both teams?
Well, I was lucky to be the one to cover that game because it was actually one of the only competitive games in the area last week. And I think what it tells us is that they're both pretty good teams like we thought they were going to be in the preseason, and they both have a good shot at the playoffs. For me, what it says about Bureau Valley is their defense is pretty good, and I know that was a concern for Jeff Olson coming into the season, but for the end of the game, they really made some big plays when it counted. They had those 2 interceptions that sealed it for them. And then for what it says about Hall is Randy Tiemann said that they can throw the ball a bit this year, and they proved that they can. Brett Fanning threw for 167 yards, which was tops in the area last week, actually. And that's not what you expect to see out of Hall. But it also says that Hall kind of has to work on the running game because they didn't really get that going last week, which is not like Hall. And Bureau Valley also, like Coach Olson said afterward to me, that they made a few mistakes they have to clean up as well. But it's a pretty good start for both teams.
If Hall gets that running game going with the pass game, they're going to be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, Hall wants to kind of return to their run-first ways that they've done in the past, but they said if you can also get Fanning throwing, I mean, that's a dual threat that Hall hasn't really had in years, and to not know what's coming is a real, positive and something they can build on.
That Bureau Valley offense has got a lot of weapons, especially with Tyler Barnes transferring over from Princeton.
Oh yeah, Tyler brings such a great offensive weapon to the Storm. I mean, he gave Hall all sorts of trouble running on the outside, or when a pass broke down, he just took off, and they couldn't really stop that. And then, of course, he can throw the ball better than any quarterback they've had in recent years. And he's got some really nice targets with Lang and Monier. But then he's not the only one who can run the ball either. Christian Connick had a huge game at fullback. They had Frank Giebeck, who was the quarterback last year. Josh Mead and Tommy Johnson, a couple of sophomores, had a nice game. So there's a lot of weapons for the Storm.
What are going to be the big games on the area slate this week, Jared?
Well, the big game this week might be one of the biggest games of the year with St. Pete travels to Hall. Expecting hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. I know we've talked about getting to the game early and dropping off cars. So that way you have a decent parking spot. I mean, you really expect that many people. These teams haven't played in almost 20 years. And both of these teams should be competitive. Both of them should be in the playoff hunt. So this could be a decisive game for the playoffs. It's very possible the winner of this game will make the playoffs and the loser will not. I mean, obviously, we don't hope that happens. We hope they both make it because we'd love to cover deep in the school year. But there's a lot riding on this game more than just bragging rights.
I don't know if it's a sin, but I think I stole a Monk's parking spot last week when I went to St. Pete. So. Any other big games on the area slate this week, Kevin?
Well, you have LaSalle Peru opening up their home schedule with United Township, which should be a winnable game for the Cavs. Like I said earlier, Ottawa's playing Chicago Steinmetz, which could be another Michael Hermosillo show.
Rockford Christian is hosting Mendota this weekend.
Big Northern.
Yeah, it's the first Even though they played Ringo last week, it was technically not their crossover game for Mendota. So this week it is. You know, Mendota went up there, was it 2 years ago in their first round in the playoffs at 5-4 and upset. I think it's the Royal Lions is their nickname. Upset them in the first round. So I'm sure, you know, that's definitely in the back of the mind of Rockford Christian.
And then you have Bureau Valley Kewanee, which should be a pretty good game. I mean, last week Kewanee lost to Morrison only 14-0, so the Boilermakers are probably pretty good again this year. So that should be good. There's a whole bunch of good games on the slate this weekend.
When you say lose 14-0, that just shows you how good Morrison and Newman are at the top of that Big Rivers Conference.
Oh yeah, I mean, those two teams are really stacked, and if you're only within 2 touchdowns of Morrison, that's usually a pretty good sign for your team.
Last 3 years, one of those teams have actually won the state championship in 2A. So really, 2A or 3A, depending on where they end up, usually go through those two teams. So if you have 14-0, that's pretty good.
Well, thanks for watching NT Prep Preview this week. We'll be back next week with another look at area prep athletics.